Oh, equality and impact. You know, we all take a little job here, don't we? You know, all hands on deck as part of production. We work together, and you know, we make it exciting for all of us. My name's Julie Lamb. I am a creative. I'm someone who is a storyteller. I'm a connector. I'm an executive producer. I'm also a founder of a tech startup. And I am honored and proud to introduce my panel here. Our topic here is, and I will forward the slide. Of course, I was remiss in doing one of my jobs, right, Chelsea? Thank you so much. You know? Well, we are all hands on deck. And it's all about, this is something that is, for me, I'm very passionate about protecting the mission. What does that mean for each of us? So I want to call to the stage a good and longtime friend of mine here, Alan Berg from the Arts and Labor Department, co-founder and co-owner. Christine Perdaco, founder of Hamptons Tech Week and co-publisher of James Lane Post and Simple Vodka. And my two newest friends, Luis and Hans, they're founders and CEO of Wondercooks. And guess what? You're going to be able to taste the fruits of their labor soon. Oh, thank you. Should we protect the mission and eat this while we're doing our panel? Yes. Oh, let's jump right in. You know, when I think about protecting the mission, that's kind of a little bit of a broad stroke. Does it start with perhaps maybe an NDA or an LLC or a partnership agreement when you're building these types of businesses either together or collectively? But since we have a wide range of panelists that are up here, I do like bringing, again, a good and longtime friend of mine, Alan Berg with Arts and Labor. One of the passions that you've had in your life mission is keeping the consistency of culture here in Austin. So when you're thinking about protecting the mission, what is keeping that culture consistent here in Austin, and then it following up with our panel topic?
Well, sure. Thank you, Julie, and honored to be here today. I think that part of it for us is just trying to figure out how to produce content that doesn't traditionally, you know, seem marketable or like it's going to turn a profit or have a big audience, but is culturally important. And so we have Arts and Labor, which is a for-profit production company. We have a nonprofit called the Society for Preservation of Texas Music. Music notwithstanding, we seed ventures. We just seeded a queer space documentary last week in a successful fundraiser, a matching fund grant. And then we also started a zine called Happy Heat to help promote so that you have an ecosystem that can kind of point to each other and reach different constituencies.
I think speaking of an ecosystem and collaborating, part of my introduction to you, Christine, was the fact that you have this event in the Hamptons where you're pulling the East End, east of Shinnecock Canal, but you're also an Austin resident. So when you collectively put something together, you also have James Lane Post, which to me is, it's really quite extraordinary because it's a combination between modern luxury and the New York Times, if you will, because it's a full-on newspaper on the East End. What is it like for you to protect your mission?
I think for me it's about protecting the mission is really just seeing what's outside of your community and looking for things that you want to bring into your community. So that's a big part of why Hamptons Tech Week was created was, you know, everyone's kind of doing something similar, and what can I do that's kind of a big conversation, you can say, nationally and globally, which is obviously technology. And let's have a conversation about it. People are curious, people are wondering about it, people don't necessarily know all the things there are to know, so how can you build collaboration on that? And that's kind of where it came into, and I just took my community and was like, we're going to do this on the East End.
I think that's really inspiring. Luis and Hans, you guys have an awesome story. You came from someplace else and brought it here. How did you feel like that was a part of protecting your mission, and would you share that with us?
Actually, the funny thing is that at that point, it was not about that, but now looking back, it's something that really built into it, is part of the DNA of what we're doing. And the way we see it is that the mission shows itself. but you need to be very on the look for it and be always trying to understand and go deeper and deeper and peeling the onion that is the company. So for us, it was now that we look back, it was there all along, but it took us a long time to fully, clearly see it.
And you mentioned that you've been here for how
4
long?
years.
4 years.
Yeah.
And home previous to that was?
That was Guatemala. We came from Guatemala, and for us, another thing that is very important to protect the mission is because one of the reasons why we moved here to Austin was because we couldn't get married, legally married in Guatemala. So we wanted to get recognized as a family. For us, that was very important. So we decided to move here. We got married, and we made the decision, because now we have a choice, and we made the decision not to have kids. So for us, the way that we see that we're going to leave our legacy in the world is going to be through our mission. So that's our baby. So that's why it's so important for us, because that's what we're leaving behind.
Like back in the day, the whole community raised the baby, right?
Correct.
That's a big part of it. You mentioned something, Alan, you said for-profit and non-profit. What was the decision to make going into both? Was it a personal ethos with you and your family?
It was because I couldn't look somebody in the eye and tell them they'd get their money back if they put it into some of the projects we were doing. So my credibility was at stake. And so, you know, it was suggested to us for one of our projects that we may want to set up a 501c3. And so we looked into it, and it's a viable thing because you can reduce the amount of capital that you need to go and raise on the for-profit side. You can have some sort of combination, or it can be totally nonprofit. And the other thing, as revenue comes back to nonprofit, it can help seed additional projects that are in that space as well.
Another big part of your ecosystem, Christine, is that you're really, for your next gen family office, you're bringing some new ideas to not only family, but to also your community members that are next gen. If you could give a great piece of advice, something that you've learned along the way, I know you've got a lot of them, something you can pull just right out of, what is your biggest piece of advice to someone who's next generation that does want to bring a thinking outside of the box and having something that's not just bias, pulling something new into the family?
I think that do your research, do your homework, look into if it's something that you're also passionate about and you want to learn more, then do that research. Look for people who are educated in this space. If you are not, understand it more, and then you can make conscious decisions on whether or not you want to invest or whether or not it's a good fit for you. Along that journey, you might find things that aren't necessarily a fit for you, but for somebody else. And through that, you start just meeting more people, building more community, and everybody kind of has a good fit to what they want to bring into their office, and also how to expand it by just something you might not think you want to invest in ever because you're like, I don't know it, don't want to learn it. You learn it, and now you're like, oh, I can make sense about this, and now I want to invest.
It must have been a little, I don't know, maybe I'm personalizing this, Luis, is when I go into a new place, it's kind of exciting, but it's a little scary. And you went, from a place that was very familiar, maybe didn't completely serve the needs at the time. What made you choose Austin?
That's a very interesting one. Originally, we wanted to move to California, to tell you the truth. That was our whole plan, but it was a little too expensive, so we decided to search for another city, and I came here like 15, 20 years ago. So I really remember that I really fell in love with Austin. Like, I really liked it. And when I told Hans about Austin, he's the researcher in the family, so I'm like, hey, I think that Austin it's a great fit. And he was doing his research, and because a lot of people, they ask us, like, why did you choose Texas? Like, you moved from Guatemala because you couldn't get married, and you're moving to Texas. And we were like, no, we're moving to Austin. It's different. So, but we love the city. We came a couple times before. We felt that we were very welcome here, that we could be ourselves. And we always say it, that here in Austin, we found our safe space, and we truly did. And that's actually, the version of Wondercooks that we had in Guatemala, it was like a in the closet version of Wondercooks. And when we came here, everything started like flourishing, and the brand started developing by itself. It happened very organically. until a point that someone told us, hey, have you realized that your brand is really queer? And we were like, no, it's not queer. And it's like, hey, everything is pink. You have a dinosaur with a tutu. You have disco balls. And we were like, oh, yeah, I think they might be a little bit. But then we analyzed it, and we were like, it's not that the brand is queer. It's the brand, it's us. We are not afraid of expressing ourselves through the brand. And it happened very organically. So it was very beautiful to see it evolve by itself. And it only happened because we chose Austin as our home base.
Hans, what was when we're here on the panel talking about protecting the mission, when you came to Austin, what did you feel was your most important protection starting and bringing the company here?
Where do I start? The main one was, and actually we got our marriage license in Georgetown there was like a glitch in the system and there one in Austin. And we were like kind of uncomfortable going there. It was like super early and we're like, oh, these two 60, 70-year-old ladies, the clerks, and we're like super awkward, super uncomfortable, and we're like, oh my God, what are they gonna say? They say, congratulations, I'm so happy for you. They were so welcoming. And that really clicked for us. And this was about 6 months before we actually were here living. And that really sealed it for us. Like, this is a completely different place where in Guatemala, to give you an idea, you go to sign up at the gym with your roommate. And when you go to a hotel, try asking the lady for a single bed. Are you sure you don't want a second bed? Like, no, we don't want a second bed, lady, thank you. And the fact that these ladies had nothing for us, but being happy for us really said it. And that is like the moment where we figured this is home. And that is like what we say about missions, like the first thing you need for a mission, and we didn't know that we had one, is you need to know what it is. And those are like the little breadcrumbs to find it.
Speaking of breadcrumbs, Alan, when you're working on a project, I know some of your projects have taken almost, it seems, it's years to complete.
Decades.
Especially a few of them that we know. I know that as we do research on each other and going back to the WikiLogic website, all of the speakers, we do have, contacts to be able to reach out to us, so if you have any questions. And when you dive deep, certainly into my fellow panelists up here, that each one of our footprints is pretty extraordinary. And yours, to me, I always think when you're doing a new project, you're doing a new film or a commercial with the local government or a very large filmmaker, how do you protect your mission when you're going from project to project?
Well, I think one thing that's important is if you have a mission, if you're living your mission, you're going to usually, I think, attract work that aligns with that mission, and then it manifests itself in your work. There's a reason that people are coming to us, and in our case, we've invested a lot of time trying to establish ourselves as the shop in town that really understands this culture, its roots, and then we also have deep relationships with emerging creatives. And so that tends to sort of self-perpetuate, I think, yeah. And the other thing, California has now come to you along with their prices.
We noticed.
You didn't have to move to California, it's come to Austin.
I think, Christine, up here on the panel, you have a really unique perspective, being a first generation, someone who gets to bring to the family and also to the east end of Long Island, which generally is sometimes a little more, have kind of more of that, not to say the blinders on, but just really being consistent with what has been working for a long period of time. When you brought Hamptons Tech Week to the East End, I know from a personal experience, there were a lot of people that it was not the verbiage that you were bringing in, the education. You brought in healthcare on the blockchain. You brought in attorneys understanding to make it happen. You brought in sports. So you really brought in topics that were not only inspiring, but made you want to think outside the box. If you hadn't, did you find that was a tough mission for you to curate the stage? And how did you protect your overall idea of what you knew Hamptons Tech Week was going to ultimately be about?
I think with Hamptons Tech Week, first and foremost, the minute I said those words, everyone in the Hamptons was like, doesn't fit. Like, there's nothing tech about the Hamptons. So I was like, beg to differ, but sure. And then after months of going back and forth, to put it politely, I finally got my approval, and I had 60 days to put it together. And, the whole mission about it was just, let's take everyday topics that we deal with, from fashion, sports, healthcare, nonprofits, impact, but also incorporate the legalities around it, investing in it. This year's topic was really focused on Web3. This upcoming summer will be a little bit different of a focus. And I think the whole process behind it was just stay true to, this is an educational platform, because 90% of the people, last summer's theme was Web3. 90% of the population does not understand what that means, myself included. So the mission was just take something that you can relate to and how this new technology, this new wave of Web3 is getting integrated into your life. But also, how do I keep it resonant within the community in which I'm bringing it to, which is why we had arts, sports, fashion, investing, impact, nonprofits. So at least the community could actually resonate with it, and they didn't feel like I was bringing, one of the big NFT conferences to the East End, but something that they were more comfortable with.
I know this is a little off topic, but since our two favorite cookie cooks are up here on stage, I know you had something a little special this evening that you will be sharing with the audience, yes?
Right.
Can I say that? I just let the cat out of the bag, right? So can you share a little more, Hans, what's going to happen this evening? Or if you have a new recipe.
It's not a new recipe. I mean, we have a lot of those, but we're actually launching the Safe Space Project, which is our charitable foundation. And the goal with the Safe Space Project is we found a very different way of doing business with Wondercooks to really put brands, to really give them meaning and make the brand not about the stuff that you put in the packaging, but about the whole organization. And we firmly believe it, and a lot of that is empirical. So the goal of the organization is to put the theoretical knowledge behind that so that we can replicate and other brands can come to us and say, hey, I love what you're doing at Wondercooks. I don't really particularly care about safe spaces, but I want to save the pandas. How do I do this? How do I build it in a way that is purposeful and powerful? So hopefully we'll be able to help a lot of brands, which is how we see the future of brands.
So with that said,
Luis, tell us.
no, yeah. So actually, these type of events for us, they mean a lot, because we are asking for people to reach out to us, because we're constantly looking for help. We are constantly looking for support. So we know that in this journey that we are starting with the Safe Space Project, we don't know a lot of stuff, and we want to stay very humble. So in any way, if you can support with knowledge, with donations, or with whatever you think that it's valuable to our foundation, just reach out.
So what is the Safe Space Project?
You have it, Berg.
The Safe Space Project is the Safe Space Project is that it's the systematization of all of the knowledge that we have put to there, so that we can talk about how a brand is part of the ecosystem, has a responsibility to its community, has a responsibility to its customers and to its stakeholders. So that is a new way of making brands. And the whole point about the Safe Space Project is that the brand coming to us and saying stuff, like saying things about their mission, saying about the ingredients that they use, whatever, comes with a duty to listen. So the brand and the organization no longer get to just have a one-way conversation. So we're really trying to change the way that brands operate, because we have seen that it's in many cases is very harmful. For instance, I have a big problem with brands that are the so-called better for you brands that have become, I'm going to shame you into buying this because you're fat. So we're trying to help lead the charge so we move away from that.
And just to give you a little, maybe this will explain it a little better, but for me, for example, when we started developing this concept and how we can take our brand to the next level, I got to think about the scariest place on earth that I ever been in my life. And for me, being from Guatemala, going to an all-boys Catholic school, for me it was the first day of school when I was 4 years old. I came out of the closet when I was 30 years old. And back in that first day of school, I knew that there was something different about me. I didn't know how or why, but I knew that I was different and I was very afraid. And just picturing myself on that first day of school, what would have meant for me seeing a little kid pulling a Wondercooks cookie outside of his lunchbox, and just by that, knowing that I was going to be in a safe space around him, his family, or his friends, that would have been a game changer for me. And just for the fact that we could bring that to the world, especially to kids that are, you're in a very vulnerable world when you're a little kid. Kids could be very mean, but they also could be allies. And having the power to have that in our hands, it's priceless. So that's what we want to achieve with our brand, and that's what we want other brands to start talking about.
And I know, Alan, we've had lots of conversations about keeping Austin culturally its own flavor. And we had most recently in our connectivity call, you had mentioned when you first moved to Austin, there's a story where I don't want to speak for you because it's such an eloquent story that you shared about the timeline and keeping Austin beautifully Austin and having it grow. Will you share that story with us?
If I can remember it. But the thing that, look, my wife and I were both born here in Texas. We grew up in a small conservative town, different families. We grew up a block apart. We knew each other. We knew that we didn't fit where we were. You know, these people just fundamentally believed different than we did, right? And so, like a lot of Texans, we ended up here. And if you look at like southern creative hotbeds, they tend to be in a capital city where the state university is. Oxford, Mississippi, Athens, Georgia, places like that. Austin's one of those places. Now, my next door neighbor, who I just met, moved here from Pasadena. He's in charge of some program at Tesla. And that is what brought him here. He could be in Charlotte, he could be in Chicago, he'd be wherever that job was. Where previously, what made Austin weird, what kept us going, is this was a blueberry in a bowl of tomato soup, where you came in this area if you felt you were different from other people and you needed a little bit of space to breathe. The positive about what's going on right now is that we haven't traditionally been a very diverse community. And if you look at the creative output from previous generations, I mean, we're liberal. You know, yeah, got all that, but we're not very diverse. And so now in some ways we're less diverse. Our black population has dropped as a percentage of overall population because there have been so many tech bros moving in. The growth that's coming in is predominantly white, but one of the things that's encouraging is a tremendous growth rate in like the Asian, Southeast Asia Pacific rim, you know, and so in some ways we're becoming a much more interesting city, even as we become more like a homogenous business city.
You know, it's interesting when you think about descriptions or definitions, right? You could describe me a certain way. I don't know that I'd always maybe want to be defined, but we've talked about before keeping the idea of keeping Austin weird, right? The places that we're so used to that maybe after a while they closed down and they were our favorite. Places that when we go out of town and we bring people back and we notice something has closed. When you first moved here, people said to you, oh, since the Armadillo World headquarters is closed, you've missed fill in the blank. But this was really a good part of the story that you share, that each time something new happens, something incredible becomes of it.
Well, it's just, I was sharing with Julie that when I was telling that story to Nick Barbaro, the publisher of the Chronicle, co-founder of South By, who's 10 years older than me, he said, well, when I got here in the 70s, they said it had ended because the one night it closed. The generation after me is like, well, after Liberty Lunch closed. And so there are these clubs that were iconic to that particular point. They're gone, but the spirit's here, and the people that are coming here now have their own favorite clubs. And so as long as that's kept alive, and that's really what we're trying to do, is seed diverse creative output in our community, about our community, that's reflective of our culture and our values. We're taking, you know, we directly addressed reproductive rights, we directly addressed gun violence, but we did it by commissioning artists to develop content that would address those, because there's just so many words out there, and we felt like the power of creative expression would be another way in and might actually bring some people into the conversation that are turned off when they turn on talk radio or something.
Yeah, when I first came to Austin, Texas, I came as a musician, pie-eyed, straight out of high school, and I was going to join the circus. And I met what became my mentor, Louis Myers, one of the 4 founding fathers of South by Southwest. And he said to me, "You're not joining the circus. This is 1986. You're going to join South by Southwest." So we all know what that's, that shifted and changed, right? It was 70% local music, 30% national and international music. And over the years, that has certainly changed a lot. And it's interesting because every time I come back, and I know I'm here during a part of it, I feel like I'm one of the only mere mortals that's participated in every single one of them. Even the 2 years when we had the pandemic, when we stayed separated apart from each other if we did a private or, meet up, but, as we felt comfortable doing that. But I know Louis Myers is, he left us in the year that President Obama came and spoke as a keynote. So it was a very big changed day for me that my mentor shepherded in a big change here in Austin. And it's interesting that both of our big starts happen to come from the two of the 4 founding fathers of South by Southwest. Christine, when you think about because you've started not only Hamptons Tech Week and James Lane Post as a co-publisher, you even brought in a couple of alcohol brands into your fold. This is exciting. You're diversifying your portfolio not only with paying it forward within the community, but also bringing new products into the consciousness of your current community.
Well, yeah, I mean, my spirits portfolio, that was my baby. That's still my baby. My first project that we started. And, my partner started it, built the concept, built the model, and was like, come launch this vodka company with me. And every drink you pour, a hungry American gets a meal. And explained to me the issues around food insecurity in the U.S. especially. And, the product tasted great. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. Party with a purpose, cocktail with a cause. Like, the slogans just kept coming. And I was like, I can sell this. Not knowing the first thing about alcohol or the spirits industry. It is not easy. It is very, very, very hard. And, we just kept really fighting for that mission. The pandemic kind of shut us down a little bit. We were in this, too new to be promoted and off-prem and, in this weird stage. But through the pandemic, we reset. We built out our whole SKU line for our vodka company. We actually brought on a gin company that's based out of the UK that was created on naval ships. So we are now going to create a 1 drink, 1 meal for veterans. And then we are currently, which I can talk about it now, I'm pretty sure, we just brought on a new agave spirit, which even though it will not have the 1-to-1 ratio, which also having that 1-to-1 ratio really, it forces us to be transparent and keep us honest. Where it's this equals that, where a lot of brands say 5% of this gets donated to X charity. Well, 5% of what? 5% of your annual sales, quarterly sales, this one SKU line, 5% of what? So this is like, this equals this, it's very simple math. And, but our new product is a puchetta it's called pulque, and then when you ferment it, it becomes pulqueta. I'm still learning. But the beauty around that ethos is that it provides income for over 200 farmers in Mexico. And they all have this really beautiful farming community where they work together to build this whole line. And we're the only importers in the US that will be carrying it. So it kind of fits our ethos. So we're kind of like a regenerative spirits portfolio now. And we're the only one in the US. So it's very exciting. That's my passion project. I love that one.
So we're getting close to the end of our panel, and I always like to end a time that I get to spend with my friends and my new friends in the audience. Do you have a saying that you like to live by? And I know, Luis, a few of us were saying things that there's a lot that we live by. But do you have an inspiring sentence that you like to live by?
Never be afraid to be yourself. I like to live by that. You can clap. No, don't be shy. No. Thank you.
Hans, you almost pulled the microphone up to you.
I kind of have a corollary to that, but it's never be afraid to say that you don't know, and be open to answer, to be open to the people who actually do. But yeah, that's super important. It's something that has been very hard for me to learn. But now I'm very good at saying, I have no idea.
Christine, what's yours?
I think the power of collaboration and community. Just always feel free to ask the questions you want to ask, and bring it all together, and you get something beautiful out of it.
Alan?
Well, my mentor's saying was, if you're praying for potatoes, you best be holding a hoe. And so I take that to heart. It's about the doing. It's about getting your hands in the soil and making something, not about talk.
So to end the panel, what I'd like to say is stay true to your word. If you say it, do it, and we're all doing it together. So I'd love to meet each one of you, connect with us, and we are right at the end of our panel. Please stick around. We've got other great ones for you to pay attention to. Thank you.